Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never imagined that a single toast, one lifted carelessly over a glittering dinner table, could shatter 8 years of marriage. But that night, under warm lights and surrounded by people who barely knew me, my wife, Marielle, raised her glass with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and declared, "I gift myself a divorce." Her friends roared with laughter, clinking their glasses like it was some edgy punchline at a comedy roast. Maybe for them it was. For me, it landed like a stone right between my ribs. I sat there, frozen for a moment, my hand still resting on the stem of the wine glass I hadn't even lifted yet. I scanned the table. Smirks, nudges, raised brows, the whole table entertained at my expense. But my gaze stopped on Emily, Marielle's closest friend. Sweet, gentle, soft-voiced Emily. Someone who never laughed at anyone's pain. But tonight, even she had a small, nervous smile on her lips. And somehow that stung more than the loud laughter from the others. I leaned slightly toward her and whispered, quietly but sharply, "Why laugh, Emily? She'll be gifting herself to your husband again after the party." It was the kind of line that leaves a room humming afterward, even if no one else hears it. Her smile evaporated instantly. Her eyes widened, her fingers froze around her glass, and a faint pink rose up her neck. She didn't answer, not a single word, just silence. And that silence told me more truth than any confession could have. Marielle, oblivious to what I had just said, continued her performance, laughing dramatically, leaning into her friends, soaking in the attention like she was the main character in a sitcom. "Oh, relax, Oliver," she said loud enough for the whole table. "It's a joke. Don't be so sensitive." Sensitive. The word she used when she didn't want to take responsibility. The night moved on, but the mood had shifted. I barely spoke. Emily avoided my eyes completely. Her husband, Callum, kept looking between us, confused. And Marielle? She was too busy to notice the cracks spreading under her own dramatics. When the dinner ended, couples drifted toward their cars, and the group slowly disbanded. Marielle stood by the curb scrolling her phone, clearly expecting me to fetch the car like nothing had happened. Like her little divorce toast was something I should laugh about on the way home. But Emily lingered nearby, pretending to search for something in her purse. I walked past her, not stopping, not slowing. She spoke without lifting her head. "You didn't have to say that," she murmured. "And you didn't have to laugh. It was just a toast." "Sure," I said. "And your reaction told me everything." She finally looked up, her blue eyes filled with guilt and something else. Fear, maybe, or shame. "Oliver, please don't start anything." "I'm not starting anything," I said quietly. "I'm ending something." Before she could respond, Marielle called out, "Can we go? My feet are killing me." She sounded annoyed, bored, impatient, the trifecta of her recent personality. On the ride home, she talked nonstop about the party, the outfits, the food, who said what, who wore what. She didn't once mention the toast. She didn't once ask if I was okay. She didn't even notice that I hadn't spoken more than 3 words. When we reached home, she kicked off her heels, tossed her clutch on the armchair, and said, "You really need to stop taking jokes personally, Ollie. It's embarrassing sometimes." Embarrassing. I stared at her. This woman I had loved, protected, supported, forgiven. This woman who used humor as a weapon and called it personality. This woman who had slowly drifted from me like she was being pulled by a tide only she could feel. "Did you mean it?" I asked. "Mean what?" "The toast." She shrugged, completely unfazed. "It was a vibe. Don't overthink everything." "A vibe?" I repeated, choking out a humorless laugh. She brushed past me toward the bedroom. "I'm going to shower. Try smiling a little, Oliver. It won't kill you." The water started running behind the closed door, and I stood there in the quiet of our living room, finally understanding something I had been avoiding for months. Sometimes a joke isn't a joke. Sometimes it's a truth wrapped in laughter. And sometimes It's the final warning before the collapse. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was angry, but because clarity has a strange way of keeping a man awake. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the occasional sound of Marielle turning in her sleep like nothing at all had happened. No guilt, no awareness, no care. By sunrise, I had already made coffee, showered, and dressed. I sat at the table scrolling through old photos, anniversaries, vacations, stupid selfies we took when we were still us. And I realized something painful but liberating. I missed the version of her that no longer existed. And she missed the version of me she could control. When she finally wandered into the kitchen, wrapped in her robe, hair in a messy knot, she yawned like a content child. "Morning," she said. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I replied. She poured orange juice, barely listening. "Overthinking again? You really need a hobby." There it was, the same dismissive tone she used whenever she didn't want to confront the truth. She acted like emotional distance was a minor inconvenience, like dirty laundry or an unpaid bill. "We need to talk," I said. She froze mid-sip. "About last night." She rolled her eyes. "Oliver, I already told you." "I'm not asking for an explanation," I said calmly. "I'm asking if you meant it." She tapped her nails on the counter, a habit she had when she knew she was wrong but refused to admit it. "Does it matter?" Everyone laughed. The vibe was light. "You always overreact." But she didn't meet my eyes, which told me everything I needed. "I'm going out," I said. "To where?" "To think." She scoffed. "You don't need to think. You need to lighten up." I took my keys. "And you need to stop using humor to hide resentment." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I left before she could find any. I drove with no destination. Just the open road, the hum of the engine, and the kind of silence that feels like someone finally pressed a reset button in your head. At some point, I ended up parked near a small lake not far from town. I sat on a wooden bench, watching the water move slowly under the morning light. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Please." Emily. Of all the people I expected to hear from, she was last on the list. But something in her text, something heavy, pulled me back into my car. We met at a quiet cafe 20 minutes later. Emily looked shaken, her hands wrapped too tightly around her mug. When she saw me, she didn't bother with small talk. "You weren't wrong," she whispered. "About what?" She swallowed. "About her. And my husband." The cafe noise faded around us, the world narrowing to her trembling voice. I didn't want to believe it. I thought it was harmless. A little too flirty, maybe. But last night, after your comment, I checked his phone. She exhaled, a long, painful release. "There's something going on, Oliver. Messages. Meetups. I don't know how far it's gone, but it's more than friendship." I leaned back, the truth settling over me like cold air. Not shock, just confirmation. The kind your gut gives you long before your mind catches up. "Why tell me?" I asked quietly. "Because I laughed at the wrong thing," she said. "And because you deserved honesty." Her eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. Emily wasn't dramatic. She wasn't someone who sought chaos. If she said she'd found something, she had. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I really am." "It's not your fault," I said. "None of this is." But deep down, I knew this was the final push I had been waiting for. By the time I returned home, the house felt unfamiliar, like I was walking into a place I used to live but had outgrown. Marielle was sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone, legs crossed like a queen waiting for her audience. "You're back," she said flatly. "Are you done with your dramatic morning?" I nodded, calm, too calm. "Yeah, I'm done." "Good. Maybe now you can apologize for." "I'm filing," I said. She blinked. "Filing what?" "Divorce." The word hit the air with none of her drunken comedy, none of her laugh-track audience, none of her borrowed bravery from friends. Just truth, quiet and steady. Her face changed. Slowly. Shock mixed with disbelief, then indignation, then something she hadn't shown me in a long time, Fear. You're serious? She whispered. Completely. But last night was a joke. For you, I said. Not for me. She stood abruptly. You can't just decide that without talking to me. You decided it first, I replied. You just wrapped it in champagne and sarcasm. She opened her mouth, ready to deny, ready to twist, ready to blame. But then she stopped, because she saw it. The resolve. The finality. Oliver, please, she said, her voice cracking. Funny how quickly arrogance turns into pleading when the consequences arrive. I'll let the lawyers handle communication, I said, echoing the coldness she had used so casually with me for months. Can we at least discuss? I wish you well, Marielle, truly, but I'm done being the punchline. And for the first time in a long time, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It was freeing. As I walked out, her voice broke behind me. A sound filled with regret, shock, maybe even realization. But it came too late. Some endings aren't loud. Some endings aren't tragic. Some endings are simply a man choosing his peace over someone else's performance. And this time, the gift was mine.